Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are going to talk about a topic that has been making headlines all over the world. I am in Moscow, actually in the heart of the city, in the heart of Russia's vibrant capital. And today we are going to explore what it's really like to be in Russia, specifically here in Moscow, in 2025. I know what you might be thinking. Russia has been called the most sanctioned country in the world. Is it even possible to travel there right now? And what is it like to be there? How do the sanctions impact local people or even tourists? We are here to figure all of this out together. Let's dive into a topic that we hear so many things about in the news. But for today, we will forget all the myths and the stereotypes. We will see the reality of what it's like to be in Moscow in 2025. Russia is massive and things here change quickly. There are currently 17,000 sanctions here on Russia that have been made by more than 50 countries worldwide. That sounds pretty intense, and it actually is. Of course, it does have an impact on Russian daily life, especially for those who work with companies internationally or those that need to travel a lot. Besides that, also for people who want to travel to Russia or make negotiations here with Russia, things became a bit more complicated nowadays. I actually created a video that you can check out if you're interested about how much of an impact these sanctions also have for international travelers. But let's now check out a little bit more how much the sanctions impact the daily life here in Russia. Let's start with some basics, and that is food and shopping. When I did my research, I found a few videos with empty shelves in supermarkets, but obviously, look around, that's definitely a myth. There are no empty shelves anymore here in Russia. In fact, there is more than you need, probably. There is a huge abundance of food and groceries, and you can basically find anything you may need. However, this might have looked a little bit different once the sanctions hit. Because of course, also in Russian supermarkets, there used to be a lot of international brands. And once the sanctions hit, a lot of international brands decided to leave the country. And therefore, there were, of course, parts in supermarkets that were empty. And if I may say this, I feel like it is pretty impressive how quickly Russia has adapted. Let's get a little bit of a closer look of what we can find here. While many international brands have left the country, there are still well-known international brands that you can find here in Russian supermarkets, such as Coca-Cola, for example. However, Coca-Cola is not producing in Russia anymore, and this one here is imported from Azerbaijan, for example. So there are a lot of international brands that officially aren't available in Russia anymore, but they are being imported from third-party countries such as Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan, for example. And then there is a new cola, or I'm not sure if it's new, but this is a Russian cola. And they say that it tastes exactly like the original Coca-Cola. And there's a reason behind this, because this one here is actually being produced nowadays in the old factory of Coca-Cola. I'm not sure if the recipe is exactly the same, but that is what people actually say. It's supposed to taste 100% like the original Coca-Cola. While you can buy the Russian version for 110 rubles, the Coca-Cola, the imported one, would be 200 rubles. With the beginning of the war with Ukraine in 2022, a lot of US companies have left the country. And so did various food chains, including McDonald's. However, a Russian version came into place. There were some Russian investors that bought up the McDonald's stores. They rebranded it, they renamed it into something I cannot pronounce, but it does translate into something like tasty, and that's it. And they opened up all of these stores. They kept the menu, they kept the franchise model. So it's basically still the same McDonald's as it used to be, with a new name. But the worst of it is that nowadays this food chain has become one of the most successful food chains and franchise companies of Russia. They have more than doubled their revenue by now. Let's get in there and try some food. Let's see if it is really the same as it used to be when it still was McDonald's. I believe we found the Big Mac. It looks exactly as the Big Mac in Europe, and if you want to buy it solo, you would pay 206 rubles. I believe that is the cheapest Big Mac I've ever seen. Let me know how much it actually costs in your country. Let's give the Russian Big Mac a try and see if it tastes different or not. Okay, they can give this store the name they want to, they can call this burger however they want to, it's the same. This is a Big Mac, definitely. All they did was rebrand the store and their food, but the menu is the same, the taste is the same. It's McDonald's. McDonald's is not the only food chain that has been changed into a Russian food chain. There is Starbucks, for example, that is nowadays called Stars Coffee. Then there is KFC, that is known as Rustics. There is Domino's Pizza, which is exactly the same. They only changed one letter into Cyrillic. So all of those stores have kept their business model, their menu and everything stayed the same. Only the name was slightly changed as well as the logo. Now, who are the winners in all of this? Well, partially the franchise businesses, but also the clothing brands. Because with the sanctions starting in 2022, there were many giant brands such as H&M or Zara that have left the country. And the gaps were filled with Russian brands. Some of them scaled up productions and they invested millions to fill in those gaps. Nowadays, you can see in malls like this one here, lots of stores, nothing is empty, and there are a lot of more Russian stores nowadays than there used to be. However, there are still international brands here as well. It's just that the giant clothing brands have left the country. Probably, if at some point they want to come back, it will be extremely hard because, as mentioned before, there are no gaps here in the malls. All of the stores are occupied, and therefore it'll probably be extremely hard to set foot back here in Russia again. But of course, there's also a downside in all of this, because since Russian brands have invested quite a lot of money into scaling up their production and opening up new stores, of course, the prices have also gone up ever since 2022. Nowadays, the prices in those Russian brands are probably a bit more elevated than those giant clothing brands used to be, for example. However, in malls like this, you will still see a lot of stores, a lot of people. It is still a bustling place, and not like you might expect from what you hear in the media. One thing you really notice is the amount of building work you see here happening. It is mostly in Moscow, but also in other major big cities. And that is because the economy has mostly turned inwards. That means that a lot of investors have invested into the country. But besides that, mortgages have also been subsidized for quite some time. While this has stopped by now, the construction work is still ongoing. There are a lot of old buildings that are nowadays being demolished and replaced by other new and extremely modern building complexes. Another impressive and futuristic redevelopment project is this here behind me. Right now you cannot really imagine what it's going to look like at some point, but they are planning to build sky villas here. There are some historical structures below this, and they will build villas on top of columns, which is meant to ensure that these historical buildings will remain here. From those villas, people will have an insane view probably over this area. And we can see some pictures of what it's going to look like in the future. This project is meant to be finished in 2006. That's pretty ambitious, I would say, because so far it doesn't look even close to be at the end, and it's already mid-2025. But that's how ambitious people plan the reconstruction projects here in Moscow. Okay, let's talk about something super important for any potential traveler to Russia, and that is money. In 2022, Russia has been cut off from the SWIFT system. What does this mean for us travelers? Well, basically, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, and so on do not work here in Russia. You cannot use your usual credit card anymore. Here in Russia, people use the Mir system, and it works perfectly fine for anybody who has a Russian bank account. But for us travelers, cash is king. You need to bring cash if you want to spend money here. It is, at least in European countries, impossible to get rubles. And again, your cards aren't going to work here. You won't be able to pay in cafes, restaurants. You won't be able to withdraw cash at an ATM. None of this is going to work. So make sure to bring either euros or dollars. However, euros are illegal to bring from a European country. So in our case, we brought dollars with us and we exchanged them here in a currency exchange office. So as you see, the sanctions also have an impact on travelers. For Russian people who earn money within the country, who have their bank account here and work for Russian companies, the finances haven't changed that much, apart from inflation, of course. But for us travelers, it definitely got way more complicated and you need to plan and organize your trip ahead. What is surprising, though, is that you can easily open up a Russian bank account if you want to do so. All you need to bring is a translated passport, and it has to be officially translated. And then you can open up a bank account here and get a card here to pay with that card. However, keep in mind that you also won't be able to transfer money from your own international bank account to a Russian bank account. That means, again, in any case, you will have to bring cash to be able to put it onto your Russian bank account if you want to do so. So as you see, traveling got more complicated due to the sanctions, as well for international people. Another thing that impacts at least Western tourists are the use of Western applications such as Instagram and Facebook. Those apps have been labeled extremist organizations and therefore they are banned here in Russia. Also, I believe Twitter doesn't work, but TikTok and Telegram, for example, do work perfectly fine. But for apps like Instagram and Facebook, you would need a VPN to be able to still use them. However, I do not believe that this has anything to do with sanctions. I believe this was like that already before the sanctions started and the war and everything. But if you know anything else about that, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below. If you want to use these services, I personally can recommend you to use an eSIM that I will link you in the description below. I am using it. It has a VPN included and it works perfectly fine. This way I already have internet as well. So it's something I can recommend, but if you don't want to have that eSIM, your VPN will be your best friend, I guess. Now, what is the takeaway from all of this? Life in Russia has definitely changed ever since 2022. It is becoming more and more complex. However, life goes on for those who are spending and earning their money within the country. In any case, everybody is facing higher prices as well as limitations of traveling and the interaction between people from other countries and tourists. The Russians that need to travel or work with international companies, however, face bigger struggles. But it also seems like Russian people are incredibly adaptive. The idea of empty stores or people not spending money anymore definitely isn't correct. Stores have been rebranded and the gaps have been filled with Russian brands. There's still a buzzing economy and the streets are everything but empty. However, for us travelers, there are also bigger impacts. Traveling to Russia is more difficult than ever and we are definitely facing some challenges here. If you're interested in traveling to Russia and you still feel a little bit overwhelmed with all of the information, don't worry, I've got you. There is a full guide on how to travel Russia in the description below, so make sure to check that out. Or, of course, you can also continue watching my videos because I have been documenting the whole trip. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned a little bit more about life in Russia in 2025, and I hope to see you in my next videos.